start reading? Yeah.
We have to read from this relation of the
That's right. Fatherhood. Yeah.
This relation of the divine fatherhood and the closer relation with the divine as the mother soul of the universe have their springs in another early religious motive. One type of the bhakta, says the Gita, is the devotee who comes to the divine as the giver of his wants, the giver of his good, the satisfier of the needs of his inner and his outer being. I bring to my bhakta, says the Lord, his getting and his having of good, yoga shamimam vahamyaham. The life of man is a life of wants and needs and therefore of desires, not only in his physical and vital, but in his mental and spiritual being. When he becomes conscious of a greater power governing the world, he approaches it through prayer for the fulfillment of his needs, for help in his rough journey, for protection and aid in his struggle. Whatever crudity there may be in the ordinary religious approach to God by prayer, and there are many, especially that attitude which imagines the divine as if capable of being propitiated, bribed, flattered into acquiescence or indulgence by praise, entreaty, and gifts, and has often little regard to the spirit in which he is approached. Still, this way of turning to the divine is an essential movement of a religious being and reposes on a universal truth.
Small para, not big, so we can read that. So, the relation with the divine can be many, many, many. Okay, so mostly it is that of a king in the earlier stages, and he is a judge, so he'll judge you. So those are all distorted images of the relation. But there is the relation of fatherhood. He is my father, and sometimes you can think of the divine as your mother. Okay, there are also other relations like you take like Saint Catherine, for instance, or even our Meera. Okay, they took the divine as a husband. That also is possible. And then there are others also who think of them as a friend. That's a relation between Sudama and Krishna. Okay, so like that there are so many. Guide. Okay, so this he is discussing here fatherhood. This relation of the divine fatherhood with the closer relation with the divine as a mother soul. Note the interesting thing, you can be closer to your mother than to your father. The father is sometimes he is a little distant, but the mother is very, very close. You can do all sorts of things with your mother. You can demand things from her. You can abdar, what they say in Bengali. Abdar, you can also demand things from your mother. Do this for me, do that for me. Okay, it's a much closer relationship of the universe. Have their springs in another early religious motive. So, what is that motive? You demand things from the divine. Okay, so, and the Gita quotation is there. You remember the 4 types of who approach the divine. One is the first one is the one who is suffering. Okay, Artha, he is suffering and he asks for relief from suffering. The second one is Artharthi. Artha, Arthi, is the one who is asking for success in the world or even money, okay, wealth in the world. So that's you think of him as one who will grant your wishes. So there is another early religious motive. Not the word early. In other words, is not perfect yet. Early religious motive is there is an element of truth in it, but there is also an element of misconception. Okay, so wrong ideas. The divine will not always fulfill your desire. He may, but then there are so many other things that can be discussed. Okay, one type of the bhakta, says the Gita, is a devotee who comes to the divine as a giver of his wants, the giver of his good. Okay, the satisfier of the needs of his inner and outer being. Artharthi can be outer being, but the inner being also is one who wants knowledge. Okay, jnani. Okay, he also is there. Now there is a quote. I bring to my bhakta, says the Lord, his getting and his having of good. Yoga kshemam vahamyam. Vahamyam, aham vahami. I carry, I give to my bhakta yoga kshema. Yoga kshema is exactly he is described here, getting and having of the good. Okay. The Life Insurance Corporation of India uses this yoga kshema. Okay, yoga kshema vahamyam. Life insurance gives you, when you are in trouble, they give you what you have insured for. So yoga kshema. The life of man is a life of wants and needs and therefore of desires, not only in his physical and vital, but in his mental and spiritual being. There's also desires in the spiritual being. Aspiration is a form of desire. Okay? So, when he becomes conscious of a greater power governing the world, he approaches it through prayer for the fulfillment of his needs, for help in his rough journey, for protection and aid in his struggle. Okay? Whatever crudities there may be in the ordinary religious approach to God by prayer, and there are many wrong approaches which has discussed earlier, okay? Especially that attitude which imagines the divine as if capable of being propitiated. Okay, you can bribe him, flattered into acquiescence or indulgence by praise, entreaty, and gifts, and has often little regard to the spirit in which he is approached. Still, this way of returning to the divine is an essential movement of our religious being and reposes on a universal truth. So even the attitude of a father who is going to satisfy my wants, there is a desire in it, and therefore it is not the real spiritual aspiration. There's something wrong, but still it is better. As a starting point, it's certainly good. Okay. In fact, Islam has gone so far as to say that even the other idea of he can be propitiated, I can bribe him. Okay. You don't think of it in these terms, bribe and propitiate, but everybody does that. Okay. I told you the story of that man who used to send, whenever he had a problem, he used to send 100 rupees to the ashram, and his problem is to get solved. So when I told him, what happens if it doesn't get solved? He said, I send another 100 rupees. Another 100 rupees I send, and then it gets solved. So these are all crude ideas, but there is an element of truth in it. That's the whole point. Okay? And as a starting, it's okay. In fact, ultimately, the relation should be only of you are giving to the divine, not the divine giving you. There should be no demand at all. That is a perfect relation with the divine. You give yourself fully surrendered. So this is what Srila is saying, that the fatherhood, okay, demanding of the divine, there is an element of truth in it, although it's not perfectly spiritual. Okay. The best, of course, is to say to the divine, do what you think fit with me. Okay. I have no demands on you. Give me what you think. And you don't even ask for anything. I leave it to you to deal with me. Do what you want with me. Mother used to always say in the agenda, Sakati word. Okay? Seigneur Sakati word. Whatever you want, O Lord. Okay? So that is the best thing. So these are the grades in which one approaches the divine. So even this fatherhood, okay, the wanting something from the divine, is valid to a certain extent. It may be impure, but it's valid. Now we come to efficacy of prayer. So, Archana read the first one. So, Kiran, you can read the next one if you have the text. The
Yes,
efficacy of prayer. If you have the text, read it.
yes.
Yeah, go on, read.
The efficacy of prayer is often doubted, and prayer itself supposed to be a thing irrational and necessarily superfluous and ineffective. It is true that the universal will executes always its aim and cannot be deflected by egoistic propitiation and eternity. Entreaty.
Yeah, entreaty.
Entreaty. It is true of the transcendent who expresses himself in the universal order that being omniscient, his larger knowledge must foresee the things to be done, and it is not need and it does not need direction or stimulation by human thought. And the individual's desires are not and cannot be in any world order the true determining factor. But neither is that order or the execution of the universal will altogether affected by mechanical law, but by powers and forces of which for human life at least human will, aspiration and faith are not among the least important. Prayer is only a particular form given to that will, aspiration, and faith. Its forms are very often crude and not only childlike, which is in itself no defect but childish. But still it has a real power and significance. Its power and sense is to put the will, aspiration, and faith of man into touch will, with the divine will, as that of a conscious being with whom we can enter into conscious and living relations. For our will and aspiration can act either by our strength and endeavor, which can no doubt be made a thing great and effective, whether for lower or higher purposes, uh, between the comma dash, and there are plenty of disciplines which put in forward as the one force to be used, comma dash completed, uh, or it can act in dependence upon and with subordination to the divine or universal will. Shall I read the full sentence again without comma dash?
Go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah.
Uh, for our will and aspiration can act either by our strength and endeavor, which can no doubt be made a thing great and effective, whether for lower or higher purposes, or it can act in dependence upon and with subordination to the divine or universal will. And this later way again may either look upon that will as responsive indeed to our aspiration, but almost mechanically, by a sort of law of energy, or at any rate quite impersonally, or else it may look upon it as responding consciously to the divine aspiration and faith of the human soul, and consciously bringing to it the help, the guidance, the protection and fruition demanded. Yoga Kshemam Vahamyaham.
So another para, very interesting. Now we are discussing the validity of prayer. Okay? There are many people who say prayer is ridiculous. If you don't have faith in divine, and you think that prayer is, if you are too intellectual, you will see that prayer is something very funny. Okay, if you are purely intellectual, if you are praying to God, God is 10,000 times more intelligent than you, and He is running the whole universe. He is the manager of the whole universe, and He knows exactly what is to be done. Who the hell are you, a small person, asking Him to do this or that? Okay, so this is the even suggestions from in a company given to the manager may not be obeyed because the manager knows 100,000 things more than you. So it is ridiculous to ask for a prayer. Besides that, there are also other questions. Suppose I want rain today, because I have got 2nd December program, okay? And I don't want rain because I want my program to be perfect. So I pray to God. God, make sure that there is no rain today. Okay. And what about the farmer who wants rain because his crop will otherwise dry up? So his prayer is opposite. So who is God going to listen to? So this is why prayer is often doubted as a ridiculous approach to God. Okay. But Srindri is telling us it is not ridiculous. It is one element in the entire decision to be made by the divine. There are so many small things, and the divine takes care of everything. He answers every prayer. He answers in the right way. It's not that He's going to grant you your prayer, but He will answer it in the right way. So that's a prayer. Efficacy of prayer is often doubted, and prayer itself is supposed to be a thing irrational and necessarily superfluous and ineffective. And so we're explaining why. Okay, now in the next sentence, we're explaining why. It is true that the universal will executes always its aim. The universal will, the divine has a will, and He knows exactly what He has to do in the universe. it may not fit in with individual claims, okay, and prayers, it may not. It is true that the universal will executes always its aim and cannot be deflected by egoistic propitiation and entreaty. Okay? Entreaty is again another form of prayer only. Okay, so when you are entreating, you are actually begging. There is an element of begging for kindness. Okay, in the entreat. Okay, entreaty. Propitiation, you are satisfying him, and that's the lowest type of approach to God. And entreaty, you are actually begging of him something. It is true of the transcendent who expresses himself in the universal order that by being omniscient, his larger knowledge must foresee the thing to be done and it does not need direction or stimulation by human thought, and that the individual's desires are not and cannot be in any world order the true determining factor. Okay. But a sincere prayer does add one more element in the situation which God has to decide what to do. I'm putting it in a very crude manner, but that's exactly. So your prayer is not absolutely worthless, but very often you are asking for the wrong thing and it may not come to fruition. So, must foresee the thing to be done. Now he's using the word transcendent. Replace the word transcendent by God and replace also the universal will by God. Then you become very, very clear. It is true that God executes always his aim and cannot be deflected by egoistic propitiation and entreaty. It is also true that the God who expresses himself in the universal order of that being, omniscient, his larger knowledge. He must foresee the thing to be done, and it does not need direction or stimulation by human thought. I remember one place where the mother says to somebody, "You are trying to tell the divine what he should do." So that's what in one letter somewhere is there like that. How foolish it would be to do that. But now the other part, is it really useless prayer? There is no saying. But neither is that order or the execution of the universal will altogether affected by mechanical law. It is not something mechanical. Okay? There is a divine grace also is there. But by powers and forces of which, for human life at least, human will, aspiration and faith are not among the least important. So even the human will and aspiration has a small claim in the decision to be made by the divine. Okay, that also is there. And not among the least important. It is not absolutely useless. There is a point in it when you approach the divine. But if your faith and your prayer fits in with his plan, he will grant it. But if it doesn't fit in, he will see how it can be done. So that, but he always will answer. Prayer is only a particular form given to that will, aspiration, and faith. So, prayer is only one particular form of that will, aspiration, and faith. The prayer can be a sincere one, it can be a not a very knowledgeable one, and it can be a very defective one. Okay, so it depends on how it is being done. It's a particular form given to that will, aspiration, faith. Its forms are very often crude and not only childlike, which is in itself no defect. Now, note interestingly, if it is like an innocent child who is asking for something which is impossible, okay, it's not defective, but it is ignorant. Very interesting what he's saying. And not only childlike, which is in itself no defect, but childish, because it is ignorant. Okay? Like you ask your parents for something which they can't afford. The child is thinking that my parents will fulfill my desire, okay? But they can't afford it. So it is ignorant. That's what the point is. But still, it has a real power and significance. All prayer has got some power and significance. It contributes to the entire scheme of things. Okay. Its power and sense is to put the will, aspiration and faith of man into touch with the divine will as that of a conscious being with whom we can enter into conscious and living relations. In other words, it is a virtue of establishing a connection with the divine. However stupid, however childish, however ignorant your prayer is, you are building a connection with him. And that connection itself will make you realize that this prayer is defective, and finally it will take you to the condition where the prayer will be absolutely perfect. Okay, so it has a point. All prayer and entreaty, it has a point. Its forms are very often crude and not only childlike, which is in itself defect, but childish. But still it has a real power and significance. And what is that power? Its power and sense is to put the will, aspiration and faith of man into touch with the divine will as that of a conscious being with whom we can enter into conscious and living relations. For our will and aspiration can act either by our own strength and endeavor, which can no doubt be made a thing great and effective, whether for lower or higher purposes. Okay. Now, that's very interesting what he's saying. We'll discuss that. And there are plenty of disciplines which put it forward as the one force to be used. Use your willpower. The divine is doing something, but your own will and your own desire, does it have a place or not? So, even in the spiritual field, there are many disciplines who do that. They insist on your using your willpower. Okay? So, for instance, Tantra, okay, perhaps partly they use their power. Okay. What about Jnana Yoga? The ascetic discipline, Buddhism, Jainism, okay, they don't believe in a personal God. All these, okay. So, Jnana Yoga, you are using your own concentration and your own power. You are not asking for anything from the divine. Buddhism also, there are certain ways of doing, okay, which you follow the discipline and you will get what you want. Okay. Jainism and Buddhism, there's no belief in a personal God, but there is belief in a universal God. But the universal God is not someone with whom you can talk or with whom you can have a personal relationship. So that's what he means by plenty of disciplines. Okay. So then, which put forward, and even in the physical world, you can talk of, say, science. Huh? Okay. If you have got a will, you will succeed in what you want to do. Okay. Many examples are there. One example is Thomas Alva Edison, of course, when he invented the bulb. Okay. 250 times he failed, and yet with his will, he did it. And what about Marie Curie? Okay. Marie Curie and Pierre Curie, they are the ones who discovered radioactivity. And they had to struggle for 4 or 5 years to produce the material. So will is there, even in the physical world, you have to use your will. Okay. But of course, if you put your will into line with the divine, that's the best. But there are disciplines which don't ask for prayer from the divine at all. That's what he's mentioning. Okay. So, and that will can be used for lower or higher purposes. Okay. Even for lower purpose, it works sometimes. Okay. And there are plenty of disciplines which put it forward as the one force to be used. Or it can act in dependence upon and with subordination to the divine or the universal will. He's saying divine will or universal will. Divine will would be the personal will of the divine, and the universal will would be the impersonal will. Okay. So, and this latter way again may either look upon that will as responsiveness to our aspiration, but almost mechanically by a sort of law of energy, or at any rate quite impersonally, or else it may look upon it as responding consciously to the divine aspiration and faith of the human soul and consciously bringing it the help, the guidance, protection, and fruition demanded, yoga kshemam vahamyam. Now, this sentence I'm going to read again. It's a very big sentence. First thing, Kiran, note the word latter, okay? It's got two T's, okay? Latter, former and latter. Former means the one before. When two things are mentioned, former is the one that is mentioned before, and latter is the one that is mentioned later, okay? So, when it is only one T, it is later, okay? But this latter means the one you are not asking for a prayer, okay? And this latter way, again, okay, not asking for a prayer, but which you are using your will. And this latter way, again, may look upon that will as responsive indeed to our aspiration. So that is one thing. You can think of your will and the divine will respond to you. That's one way of looking at it. There's another way, but almost mechanically, by a sort of law of energy, or at any rate, quite impersonally. Okay? There are laws that operate, and you are using the right way. The law will allow you to have your doing. This is exactly in science it is like that. Okay, when you use the physical laws and put yourself in tune with them, you will succeed in what you are doing. Or at any rate, quite impersonally, or else you can look upon it as responding consciously to the divine aspiration. So when you are using your will, there are two ways of looking at this situation. One way is I am using the will and the impersonal will respond to me because I am doing it in the right way. Or you may think of it as a personal will of the divine and he will respond to me certainly. Both are possible. Okay? When there is human will. Or else you can look upon it as responding consciously to the divine aspiration and faith of the human soul and consciously bringing to it the help, the guidance, protection, and fruition, success demanded, yoga kshema vahamya. So even if your will is sincere and personal, okay, if you believe that the divine will satisfy you, he may not give you success, but he will turn you to the right way of willing. That's what he will say. Okay. So it's very interesting how he has analyzed the prayer, and this is the second one. Prayer can be of so many different types. Okay. And personally, if we have got plenty of time, we can read the next para also. Yeah, tell me. Yes, tell me.
Is it that yoga kshemam vahamyaham?
Ah.
Means also that divine is protecting whatever we have achieved, that it should not be used for our desires.
Kiran, I didn't exactly understand the question.
No, is it that whatever we have achieved by doing our sadhana,
Okay.
and our demands are there, no desires are there, and
Yes.
indirectly whatever we have achieved that goes in, it is spent by fulfilling our desires. So divine is protecting us from using, not spending our whatever we have achieved by doing our sadhana. Is it that yoga kshemam vahamyaham?
That depends on what your yoga kshemam is. You are, before you get the success, whatever before you have done, okay, you are asking for the divine and he will provide for you. But it depends on the individual, how he is approaching that. Okay.
But divine takes care of that it should not be get used for fulfilling your desires.
Yeah, this is a very wide question what you are asking. It depends entirely on the individual, how he is approaching the divine.
Okay.
Maybe I can talk with you later on about this matter. Yes.
Okay, Ram. Okay.
Yeah. Now we can go to the third one. Shilpa, you have the text with you? Otherwise, Suki
Yes,
can. You have the text, Shilpa?
yes, I have.
Okay. Prayer helps to prepare. Let's read the third para of today. We got 10 minutes.
Prayers helps to prepare this relation for us at first on the lower plane, even while it is that consistent with much that is mere egoism and self-delusion. But afterwards, we can draw towards the spiritual truth which is behind it. It is not then the giving of the thing asked for that matters, but the relation itself, the contract of man's life with God, the conscious interchange. In spiritual matters and in the seeking of spiritual gains, this conscious relation is a great power. It is a much greater power than our own entirely self reliant struggle and effort, and it begins a fuller spiritual growth and experience. Necessarily, in the end, prayer either ceases in the greater thing for which it prepare us. In fact, the form we call prayer is not itself essential so long as the faith, the will, the aspiration are there, or remains only for the joy of the relation. Also, its objections, the earth is interest it seeks to realize, become higher and higher until we reach the highest motiveless devotion, which is that of divine love, pure and pure and simple, without any other demand or longing.
Yeah. So now, further discussion of the prayer. Okay. Very interesting what he's saying. Prayer helps to prepare this relation for us at first on the lower plane. The lower plane is when we are ignorant, and our prayer is often ignorant or childish. Okay, so it's the lower plane. But does it have a power? What is the power? Even if you pray to God for the wrong thing, okay, it's establishing a relation, and that is the main thing. When you are wanting to, when you are making a prayer to the divine, you are actually building a connection with the divine. And that is very, very helpful. So even when it is ignorant, when you are lower egoistic, okay, that's what Shem is saying also. Even while it is there, consistent with much that is mere egoism and self-delusion. Even if you are mistaken, and even if it is very, very selfish, egoistic demand, okay, even that has got a value because it is establishing a relation. And when the relation is formed, the divine will guide you in the right way. Okay, he will take you slowly toward the right way of praying. Okay, but afterwards we can draw towards the spiritual truth which is behind it. He will slowly guide you through the relation that you have built with him. In other words, even your ignorant prayers are far better than depending on your own will and your own strength. Far better. That's what he's saying. But afterwards, we can draw towards the spiritual truth which is behind it. It is not then the giving of the thing asked for that matters. God may not give you what you want, but he will be satisfied that you are building a relation with him. It is not that the giving of the thing asked for that matters, but the relation itself, the building of the connection with God. That is important. The contact of man's life with God, the conscious interchange. And the conscious interchange in the beginning, you are building a relation with the divine, and the divine is answering, but you may not get. But the more you build that relation, you will also get what the divine is answering, you will get. Okay? In the beginning, receptivity may not be there, but ultimately it will be built. The contact of man with God, the conscious interchange. In spiritual matters and in the seeking of spiritual gains, this conscious relation is a great power. It is a much greater power than our own entirely self-reliant struggle and effort, and it brings a fuller spiritual growth and experience. So that's why surrender is so important. Surrender is the best way to build that relation with the divine. Necessarily in the end, prayer either ceases in the greater thing for which it prepared us. In fact, the form we call prayer is not itself essential for long, so long as the faith, the will, the aspiration is there, or remains only for the joy of the relation. Okay, here also we have got a parenthetical phrase. Okay, so what's really, I'll read it first without the parenthetical phrase, and then we'll see the parenthetical phrase. Necessarily in the end, ultimately, prayer either ceases. Why? Because the divine is automatically giving what you want, what you rather need, not want, but need. Okay, so there's no prayer. The divine knows what you want and he's giving you exactly what is needed. So, in the end, prayer either ceases the greater thing for which it prepared us. And what is that greater thing? Perfect relation with the divine. You don't need to pray anymore. Now, that parenthetical phrase, or let's go beyond the parenthetical phrase, for which it prepared us, or remains only for the joy of the relation. Oh, okay. So, even then, when you build the relation, you are praying. Okay, just like if you're a child and you ask for your mother, you know that your mother will give you what you want, and yet you ask for her. Ma, do this for me today, do that for me today. Okay, so she will respond. So that's what Sundar is saying, or remains only for the joy of the relation. Now he is discussing that the parenthetical phrase. In fact, the form we call prayer is not itself essential so long as the faith, the will, the aspiration are there. In fact, if the aspiration, faith, and will are there, you may not even ask for a prayer. You may or you may not, but that may be the right way. Also, its objects, the artha, he is referring to the second artharthi. First is the artha, the one who is suffering, he approaches God. The second is the artharthi, the one who wants things from the divine. Or interest it seeks to realize, become higher and higher until we reach the highest motiveless devotion, which is that of divine love, pure and simple, without any other demand of love. Ultimately, you will not be asking for anything, and you will say to the divine, do what you want with me. Give me what you think is right. I am not asking for anything. So that's it. Finally, how Sundar has described the gradation of prayer. In the beginning, it is ignorant. It can be childish and ignorant. Okay. Then slowly the wrong ideas of it, I can bribe the divine, all these type of things slowly disappear. Ultimately, the relation is a perfect relation of complete surrender and aligning your personal will with the divine will. Personal will is not there anymore because there is no ego. Okay. And then you align yourself perfectly with it. So that brings us today. We have done 3 paras, all small. Okay. In this section of divine love, okay, all the paras are very small. In the knowledge aspect, the paras are very big. Okay, so we stop here today. We got only 2 minutes. We'll see you tomorrow for essays on the Gita. Okay. Au revoir, everybody. Have a nice day.
Thank you, Rangada.